Okay, now it's time for the weekly speaker spot. Each week, one member gets 8 minutes to share with the group further insights into their business and enlighten the group a little bit, or enlighten the group a little bit more about themselves. Members can also use this time to problem solve or seek assistance and advice from the group as a collective. The time is yours to use how you wish. This week, Misty's going to let us know who over to you and your crown, Misty, because you're taking it from here.
Yeah, we have the wonderful Dr. Gary Wohlman as our speaker today. So to find out a little bit about Dr. Gary, here we go. Dr. Gary is a seasoned and highly experienced and internationally recognised communication skills coach, specialising in presentation skills training for a wide cross-section of the professional community, including those in leadership, managing directors, executive management teams, presenters, performers, and entrepreneurs. He lives sort of on the border between Queensland and New South Wales in Australia, just to give you a bit of a time zone. And he lives live, but he also lives in the online community as well. So he gets to teach live and online. His superpower is in enhancing the full-bodied engagement, interactive impact and effectiveness of live and recorded presentations, navigating the online stage and assisting developing presenters to bring their voices and messages into the world as we've always dreamed possible. With that, Dr. Gary, I'm going to let you take it away. You've got up to 8 minutes. Kathy's going to set a timer. If the buzzer goes off, that's right, just wrap it up. We'll have questions to ask. If you're shorter than that, that's so. If your talk is shorter than that, that's fine. We'll just have more questions to ask. But with that, you can take it away.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gary Wohlman, PhD and coach. I'm a speaker's mentor and help people improve presentations both live and here on the online stage. Sessions are an hour long, $150. Who buys it? People who buy my sessions want to overcome anxiety and develop a more compelling, confident presence. People who need to know how to navigate this online stage, to move through time and punctuate their key points, choreograph them so the audience knows what you're going to be saying even before you say it. And people who are ready to deliver more engaging, full-bodied, impactful presentations. Give you an example of that. One of my key tools is to have people get into the zone by identifying 3 key words that match gestures. Watch this. I am creative, inspirational, and transformational. Notice those 3 gestures. I encourage a speaker to use those gestures throughout the presentation to get into the zone, remember more what they're saying, and then the audience also is able to more easily remember and act on the speaker's message. How did I get into this? In my early 20s, I got involved in the human potential movement, which was just beginning, developed a unique form of transformational body therapy, and began to speak about it way before the holistic movement was popular. People were thinking, is this a fad, blah, blah, blah. And I became very good at presenting myself, so much so that I began working with fellow holistic practitioners, entrepreneurs, and after a while, heads of national speakers associations all over the United States, people who were highly paid speakers. When I moved to Australia 27 years ago, I began working with some of the largest companies in Australia, including 3M and Australia Post. Now I'm living off grid and being 2 hours away from the nearest town. Most of my sessions are online. I do see people face to face, mostly for executive meetings, conferences, and the like. Remember 3 key words when you think of me: confident, clear, connection. That's what I stand for. I can be easily reached on Dr. Gary, G-A-R-Y, drgary.club. I'm ready for some questions.
Nicely done, Dr. Gary. Less than 3 minutes, and you told us a lot. All right, who's got some questions for Dr. Gary?
Thank you, Gary. A succinct and powerful presentation. Thank you. A couple of questions. Your you have a PhD. What is that in? And why
Yes.
did you come to Australia?
Great questions. Thank you for that. My PhD is in transpersonal psychology and expressive arts therapy. It focused on my transformational body therapy method, where I've developed a very unusual system of stretching the muscles of the body, deep tissue body therapy, while speaking in rhyme like Dr. Seuss at the same time, to transport people on a very swift, whimsical vision quest and transform their relationships to their body, their partnerships, their communication, their creativity, and their contribution to humanity. I've been moving west my whole life: New York, California, Hawaii, New Zealand, Australia, Bali, and Thailand. And it was more of a feeling of moving in a place that it was in the unknown for me, and a place that had more openness and less clutter, less people doing what I was doing, so I could actually stand out and do what I do, which I love to do as a pioneer, guiding others through their own unknown territory.
Thank you. So
Thank
you weren't running
Thank you,
away from your creditors.
We could talk about that one later. You're very tuned in.
Nice one. Patricia, you've got your hand up?
Yes, Dr. Gary, do you also teach a little bit about how to sell on stage or not?
My main way of helping people learn to sell the speech is to have your telling become so compelling that people are magnetized to what you have to say. So I don't do sales tips on the outside. I do the work on the inside. You become so charismatic, connected, and ability to draw people in that people do the Harry Met Sally on you. Oh, I want what they're having. That's what I do. I work from the inside out.
Excellent, thank you. And another question, right? Because
Sure.
I'm also interested in living off-grid. How is that going? And how
It's
long have you been
amazing.
doing it? Yes.
Oh my God. I have to say, having born in New York City and lived in San Francisco 3 times and loving the big cities, even Melbourne when I lived here, I now, after 2.5 years of living off grid, I'm really appreciating my all oneness, my aloneness, my quiet, and I can connect like this with people without having to drive anywhere all over the world. It's an amazing shift in my perception. I'm actually able to connect better with people by spending more time focusing on nurturing, empowering, and inspiring myself first. So I'm better modeling what I'm able to do being off grid. Lots of challenges with communications and things like that. Yet I have to say, I wouldn't go back. We'll talk more about that later. Contact me. We'll go dive deeper about that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I think Lucia can attest to this. I've seen Gary actually deliver workshops, the face-to-face version, and he's always a memory of standing out because he has a very, very good way of articulating. So I'm saying to you that if you want to get out there and make presentations and you want to look good on stage, Gary's got a really good way of teaching you.
Oh, thank you, Pat.
Excellent. Thank you. Tammy, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, so this isn't so much a question as a request. Gary, can you share
Sure.
with everyone here your P
Mhm.
framework? Because I found that really helpful, and I think a lot
Yes.
of other people here will find it helpful.
Absolutely. Okay, because I'm such an engaging character, I'm going to do this with you, not as a downloading, but as an interactive exercise. Lucia is smiling because I did this with your team recently as well. This is a physicality. So it's whatever you're eating, put it down, take things out of your hands. That's good. We're going to do this together. Very simple, very powerful, very succinct and engaging. Ready? Here we go. Go like this with your fingers touching and your elbows on either side, imagining yourself creating a shape of a triangle. Yes? Okay. Now, this is what I call the P formula, PEA, which is a cycle of communication. P stands for, go like this with your fingers, point. E for example, A for application. When we give a point, like you're talking about your business, it's best to integrate that point with some example. For instance, a great example of that is, and then the application is what's in it for me from the audience's point of view. One point, one example, one application. Drop your hands now before you go on to your next point. You get my point? It's a very powerful way of helping the audience get involved with the application, have them multi-sensorize your message so people experience what you're saying and don't just hear you as a talking head. And then you can move on to point 2, E2, A2, the P formula. Very powerful.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy, for the question. Lucia, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, I don't have a question, but really just an enforcement of what Tammy was saying. It's such a wonderful example of how to present in a way that has structure but very simple. And also the first time that I met Gary, just if anyone else is in this position, it was like something totally out of the box. It was because I had been trained, and I think it was Gerald that said before about the 19th century training that many of us may have experienced. You meet someone like Gary and it's like, oh my God, this is completely different, out of the box, and more aligned with your physicality, if that makes sense. So yeah, just highly recommend Gary's training. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia.
Excellent. Gary, can you help people who want to speak at TED? So TEDx speakers.
Yes.
Yeah. So from what angle? So I know that TEDx speakers, if you think about it, right, a TEDx speaker is someone who has to speak live. So they'll be,
Yes.
they can be anxious about talking in front of a crowd. They have to put together
Yes.
a talk after they'll have an idea and they will have got their speaker spot, but they have to put together a talk. They also are standing on a stage. So there's 3
That's right.
separate areas I'm seeing there, and I'm just wondering, do you do all 3, but separately, one at a time, or is there a particular section you're working now? Here's the 3 areas: crafting the talk, saying on point, talking in front of a crowd with nerves, and then crafting. Was it stagecraft, I think is the term you use?
That's right. I can answer that question very simply. As you know, TED speeches are very concentrated in time. So I practice with them, having them speak in the, go like this with your hands, everybody. Simplest, say it after me, simplest, shortest, strongest, specific statements. To say it in fewer words, because they have to make it very concise. So I help them have their presentation be more concise, number 1. Number 2, stagecraft, to move across the stage to convey time, to particular examples and stories on particular spots in the stage. So whenever they move on to that spot, the audience is trained to know, oh, they're going to speak about that again, because they've seen that as a zone. So we're actually showing how to choreograph the points, and then the engagement with these TED speakers, with anyone that's a presenter, to have those 3 key words. Mine are creative, inspirational, and transformational. So their body language puts them in the zone, and then they're able to say flows more easily. Say these words after me. The more I trust.
The more I trust.
What I deeply know.
What I deeply know.
The more my thoughts.
The more my thoughts.
My words.
My words.
And my actions.
And my actions.
Fully, freely flow.
Fully, freely flow.
So I do that. I work with rhyme and create a new mnemonic, a new mantra, a new self-talk that's more compelling than their old pulling back. And then that transports them on stage to thinking on their feet, literally, and being able to tap into their deepest intuition, engaging audiences to be able to remember their message and act on their invitation to action. Great question there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gary. So I know with TEDx, having been a TEDx volunteer for quite some time, when somebody's picked for TEDx, they get appointed as speaker coach, but often the speaker coach will help them from an angle, whereas Gary can help from 3 angles. So you still get your volunteer if anyone's thinking about being a TEDx speaker or working towards that space. you will get a great speaker coach. They may not always go through all those three areas.
I didn't get the
There's three
question.
main areas with speaking. And so it's good to know who's the backup that you need to go to make sure that you're fully up to what you need to be to speak online as well. So thank you, Dr. Gary. Gerald, I see your hand is up.
Yes, a couple of things. The mind is a marvelous instrument. It starts the moment you're born and stops the moment you have to make a public presentation. I've always been a big believer that moving around on stage, because a moving target is more difficult to hit. So having said that, Gary, the question is, people come to you, what is their biggest fear that you have to deal with?
Yeah, the biggest fear that I have to deal with is everybody's story, belief, self-talk that I'm afraid to be seen. I'm afraid to be heard. Out of previous experiences throughout their entire life where they've been pushed down, held back, and they've squashed their capacity to speak with their full body, they feel like someone's going to reject them, hit them, attack them, ostracize them. So I'm often working with this attitude to shift that self-talk first, and then I have them present this presentation from that new place, from that new vigorous place of empowering, nurturing, inspiring self-talk. Then they can get through that very easily, like moving through the skid. That's the key. So people step out coming, I am safe to be heard. I love sharing my voice and message with you. Often people say it, but they're not fully integrous with their body and their emotions, their tonality. But that's how I work with it, with the verbal words, the vocal sounds, and the visual delivery, the 3 V's all lining up.
Thank you. I personally find it fascinating how from when we're young, we can hold on to that I don't like to speak in front of other people thing. Simon's dad loved people and loved speaking to people. But from one incident of when he was in year 9, 50 years later, for his 60th birthday party, he refused in front of everybody that came to his party when he cut the cake to say, thank you everyone for coming. Because to him, he equated that as a speech. Because once in year 9, a teacher said something to him. And then 50 years later, it was an issue. And yet he could speak to everyone. They were only his best friends and his family members that were there. And he refused to stand there and just say, thank you everyone for coming. That's it. You know, because of that one year 9 thing. It was a few.
How I work with that one, Misty, it's actually essential to not just put the Band-Aid on the open wound, but to have a speaker, presenter, developing entrepreneur tell me what was the most painful, most recent, or best, most distant past time where you were shunned, attacked, shamed, and if we can actually reproduce psychodramatically that moment and then change the framework so there's a different ending, then a person can stand up to their oppressors and suddenly, perhaps even with tears in their eyes, say, I love feeling seen. But they have to first admit, face, and then recreate the experience with a different ending. It's actually very simple and very powerful.
So really, you're a good person to hire for father of the bride. In case dad has to get up and say something at the wedding, because my daughter's going to want that to happen. Father of the bride. Funeral, last minute, oh my God, I really want to do an obituary, but at the same time, I don't want to get up in front of a crowd. I suppose they could call on you and get that help to help them get through that with something like that for the last minute. Because you'll have a way.
I remember one time I was doing a presentation for the National Speakers Association in Washington, D.C. It was shortly after the Vietnam War. And a nurse on the lunch break said, I'm so nervous. I saw so many lives being destroyed in front of me, and I have to speak about it. I feel like I'm going to lose it on stage. So I gave her a simple exercise of having her place one of her hands, you can do this now or imagine it, at the base of her spine. So instead of speaking out and getting all anxious, I had her direct the sound and the intention and the words down and in like a lance of fiery, heartfelt intention. By directing it to herself first, she was able to maintain her composure and speak about these awful things she experienced in a powerful, sensitive, passionate, and precious way. So these simple tools connecting the body with the emotions and the verbalization are best integrated like that. Very simple when a person's willing to have the courage to move through their unknown and the fear that's held them back up until now.
Excellent. Thank you. Patricia, you got your hand up again. I'm going to have you as the last person to ask a question, and then we'll be able to move on.
Okay.
Thanks.
I want to know if there is hope for someone like me, in the sense that when I'm asked to speak, I just flow. So, you know, I've been told, okay, you do this, and when I try to do it, it doesn't flow for me. It's like, what was I supposed to do again? You know. So how do I go about that? Or should I just do my stuff as I always do?
Yeah, the first thing I would do with you, and I'm happy to share that with others here too, is that simple exercise. Identify 3 key words that are your essence before you even utter a word. And then to match that with gestures so that you, when you come on stage, you're moving those gestures. I say, I'm creative, I'm inspirational, I'm transformational, you know, to say the words, but by saying that just before, like the horse at the starting gate, you get onto the stage and then you're in the zone. And then you use the same gestures that puts you into that commanding creative presence, and the words flow more easily. It's connecting the self-talk with your outer presentation. First the self-talk, then the words flow. Make sense? I'll share more with you later.
Okay, Bob.
Have a one-to-one. That's a good opportunity. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gary, for being our speaker today. Thank you, audience, for participating, asking questions. These are great questions, and they were so on point to what it is that Gary does. We didn't sort of veer anywhere. We just stuck to exactly what he was talking about. So it was great to have these questions asked, and also for the discussion on speaking at events.